From Wondery, I'm Alice Levine, and this is British Scandal. We have been on quite the journey over the past 3 episodes. It's been frustrating, desperate, and heartbreaking. And that was just being in the studio with Hugh Dennis. So for this final episode, we wanted to talk to somebody who really understands what Crowhurst was facing. And there's probably no one better than the man who won the Golden Globe race and actually was the only person to finish, Sir Robin Knox-Johnston. It took him 10 months, and when he returned home, he donated his prize money to Claire Crowhurst, Donald's wife. Robin has continued sailing to this day on races across oceans, around the UK, and is partial to a trip on the Solent. And I will be speaking to him after this.
You're at a place you just discovered. And being an American Express Platinum card member with global dining access by Resi helped you score tickets to quite the dining experience.
Okay, chef.
You're looking at something you've never seen before, much less tasted. After your first bite, you say nothing because you're speechless. That's the powerful backing of American Express. See how to elevate your dining experiences at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Terms apply.
Say hello to a new era of mental health care. Cerebral is here to help you achieve your mental wellness goals with professional therapy and medication management support 100% online. You'll experience the all-new Cerebral Way, an innovative approach to mental wellness designed around you. You'll get a personalized treatment plan from a therapist, prescriber, or both in a safe and judgment-free space. Your Cerebral therapist or prescriber will outline a customized plan with clear milestones along the way so you can get to feeling your best. Sign up today at Cerebral.com/podcast and use code WONDERY to get 15% off your first month. Offer only valid on monthly plans. Other exclusions may apply. Offer ends April 30th. See site for details.
So why did you decide to enter the Golden Globe race in 1968?
I think people have probably forgotten now, but in 1966, a chap called Francis Chichester set off to sail around the world with one stop in Australia. And he succeeded. He came back in 1967. And I was first officer on the Kenya, a passenger ship at the time. And I watched him return on television. We were in London. And I remember thinking, wow, that's one heck of a trip. Fantastic that he's achieved it. And then I thought, that leaves one thing to be done. Go around without that Australian stop. And the idea just grew on me to the point where, really, I talked myself into it.
So yours was a personal passion. This was nothing to do with competition. This was just something that you felt a real draw towards.
I started planning in 67. By that time I was planning, I was getting things ready. And then in March, Sunday Times announced I was in their race, and there were 3 others. I hadn't heard of any of them.
That was good of them to let you know.
Yes, was. Didn't ask. And I thought, well, okay, I've got competition. So instead of just going off and doing my own thing, I'll have to compete with the competition.
So did deciding to compete change your life immediately?
To the extent that I had to give up my job. They told me quite clearly, look, you've had enough time off sailing. You can't keep doing it. If you go off and do this, your job will not be there when you get back.
That must have been pause for thought.
Do you know, I didn't think about it. I said, I'm going. That's it.
Is this indicative of your personality, Robin?
You see, the thought process is what takes the time. Once you've made the decision, most of the problems disappeared.
For you, not for everyone that took part.
Well, you know, once you've decided you're doing it, that's it, isn't it? I mean, all those doubts that you might have had about, oh, what about this, what about that? They no longer count. You're doing it.
And what does the preparation look like for a race like that?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is say, how long will I be at sea? Now, that's a question of food. It's then a question of settling down and looking through every possible thing you might need in what I thought would probably be a 10-month voyage. And bear in mind, we're talking about going twice the distance any boat has ever sailed. You'd have people coming up to you and saying to you, this voyage can't be made in any case you can do it. And I thought, well, you've never met me. What a stupid thing to say. I mean, my problem was I'd never sailed in Britain. I was totally unknown in the yachting circuit. I didn't know anyone in yachting in Britain at all. And the result was no one had heard of me. And so it was very easy to say, well, he won't know what he's doing. He's merchant navy. They know nothing about sailing, which is untrue because actually we had to learn to sail.
Does that explain in the lead up why there wasn't a huge amount of press attention around you?
Well, one of the Sunday Times journalists, a chap called Murray Sale, came down to talk to me. And he asked me if I was going to beat Chichester. I said, I don't know, I'm going to try. And so he went back to his editor and just said, don't bother with Knox-Johnston, he's not determined enough. And when I sailed, it was just Robin Knox-Johnston, his scruffy little ketch, left Falmouth yesterday, It was all pretty negative stuff. As far as I was concerned, I was going regardless of them.
And what was your relationship with the Mirror? How did that work and how did that come about?
Yes, the deal with the Mirror was totally practical. The plan was that obviously they get a story before I started. They'd come with me down to Falmouth, so they got to know me better, understand what it's all about, see what I was doing, my preparations. And then the plan was that I would call them every Thursday, if I could get through on the radio, and give them a report. And then their journalist, Bruce Maxwell, would write that up for the paper on the Sunday. And that worked pretty well for about 2.5 months until damage to the boat caused water to get on the radio and it stopped transmitting. And after that, of course, I couldn't tell them where I was or report to them.
Or talk to anybody?
No, I could listen, but I couldn't talk.
Wow. So you set off on the 14th of June, 1968. What was it like sailing away from the British shore?
Partially relief. Right, we're on our way now. Let's get on with it. And bear in mind, I'm used to going to sea. I had a bit of a problem because I got a touch of jaundice. And I knew they'd hospitalize me if I told them, so I didn't tell anyone. But I just took it easy for the first month so that I didn't over-exercise too much. So I wasn't very fast for the first month, which of course fed the Sunday Times view that I wasn't any good anyway.
You were the ultimate underdog, really.
Yeah, best place to be, isn't it?
Definitely. So being alone for that long is something that I imagine a lot of people listening would think they would really struggle with. What do you do for spells without action while the weather's calm?
When the weather's calm, it's when you work the hardest. Just keeping the boat going. Because you're looking for every little flutter of wind to fill the sails and hold her and get her moving. When there's plenty of wind, it's easy. You get the boat settled on course and let her get on with it. But in very light weather, calm weather, you're spending your time looking at the sea to see a slight disturbance. There's some wind there. Get ready for it, because I can move that little bit further while I've got that wind. So calms are where the hard work is.
So that's sort of the practical consideration. What about you and your mind? How are you making sure that you stay sharp and actually stay sane?
Well, someone did ask me, have you been alone before? And I said, not really. They said, well, how are you going to manage? I said, well, I don't know. If I'm back in 2 weeks, I haven't.
Did you at any point feel like you were losing your grip or that long sustained period of isolation was having a sort of negative effect on you?
The answer to that is I didn't know. It was a worry because I was 29. I knew when this was over. I mean, I had no anticipation I'd win it. Other people had sponsors and bigger boats. And I knew when I got back, however I got back, even if I had to pull in somewhere, I got to get a job. And so I got to keep myself active. So I took to learning poetry just to keep my mind active.
Very wise. You've got to have something that is distracting you from what is genuinely a very, very scary endeavour. We should talk about Cape Horn, one of the most feared places in the world for sailors. How did you feel approaching that?
Well, first of all, let me take issue with you about how scary it is. Fear is of the unknown. The first gale you experience is scary. The 50th is, oh, not another one, because you've been through them and you've learned from them. But I'd never seen it when it's really ferocious. And that's something I did run into. I mean, I ran into, 6 gales in 10 days, south of Africa. That's when I got knocked over and quite a lot of damage done. I lost my fresh water and the cabin shifted and a few other things. But the other thing I don't think people realize, of course, before satellites, navigation is a complicated calculation. All right, that's my bread and butter. But it would take an hour and a half to 2 hours a day when I worked out about 3 different sites I'd taken on the sun, possibly the stars. And then you have to plot them and work out where I am, how am I getting on, how many miles have I done, what's my average speed, all the things you need to know, what's up ahead of me. And look, of course, you spend your time looking at the weather.
Yeah, people will find that so hard to imagine. Because of extreme weather, there was damage to the boat, your radio broke 2 months in. How did you feel when that happened, knowing that suddenly you were on your own physically, but also now on your own in terms of communication and people knowing where you were?
I felt on my own anyway, because one couldn't always guarantee to get the radio contact. You haven't got a very powerful radio. If, for instance, HMS Arcroy or the Queen Elizabeth was calling up, you were just totally swamped, and the radio station ashore wouldn't hear you. So sometimes, it'd be a couple of weeks and I haven't spoken to anyone. We just get on with it.
But this was 4.5 months, wasn't it, once the radio was broken? That's a bit different to weeks, isn't it? It's exponentially different.
Yes, it is. But then you're sailing the boat. To start with, the first bit of it was to get round the bottom of South America, around Cape Horn. I've got to go quite far south to do that. That means the weather will be worse. Off Cape Horn, it's shallow, so the waves can heap up a bit. And we're talking about the Southern Ocean, where, you can get a 30-meter wave down there. And, you've got to work out how to handle your boat in that, which it took me a little while to do. Once I got it, she behaved perfectly. And then once you're around Cape Horn, which is, I have to say, a relief, you've been in damp clothing for 5 months, being thrown around, and you're around Cape Horn, suddenly the big swell's gone, and now you're saying, right, it's the home stretch, 8,000 miles to Britain. But the weather's different. It's, I'm now dealing with the normal wind circulation of the northern southern hemispheres, which, we all know about, so you just get on with it.
You strike me as stoic, Robin, I think it's fair to say.
Perhaps a bit stubborn.
Okay, you can say it, not me. From what you've said, basically you had a lot on your plate, is what you're telling me. You didn't really have too much time to worry about the contact issue.
Well, the self-steering broke down off Australia, so after that I was steering a lot of the time, just to keep the speed up. I knew I was ahead of the Frenchman, who was experienced, and I realized I got enough of a lead to probably beat him, but I couldn't afford to relax. And so I just kept the pressure up. So I was steering a lot of the time just to keep the boat going at best speed. And, you're doing a lot of repairs too. Sails get torn, have to be repaired. Things break, fittings break, quite strong ones on occasions. And I was also collecting water whenever possible from the rain landing in the sails, because I didn't have any other water then. So, you are quite busy.
Am I right in thinking that you were having to fix the boat in shark-infested waters?
Yeah, I did once. Yeah, she was leaking rather a lot on the way out, and I dived down in the doldrums around the equator and discovered she was just opening up slightly, and I realized I needed to deal with that. So I had some copper sheet and I cut it into a strip, made some holes in it, and then I went overside and tacked it over the seam. And, you can do one tack at a time, big breath, down you go, hammer a tack in, come back up, grab another tack, deep breath, down you go, put another one in. And this was going on. I was getting on quite well until suddenly I saw this sinuous thing go past me, grey thing go past. It was a shark. So I watched it and thought, oh, sorry, it's fairly calm at the moment. And it came round again. And then the third time it was beginning to get agitated. I thought, now is the time to get out of the water. And so I got out of the water and he circled me for a while. And I thought, you're in my way. I need you out of it. I need to finish that job. I've got this thing half done. There's a bit of copper hanging off the boat at the moment. Could get ripped off. So I threw some lavatory paper in the water so they're scavengers. And when he popped his head up to eat it, I shot him.
You shot him?
Yeah.
And did he swim away?
No, he died.
There in front of you?
Yeah, I shot him in the head.
Robin, have you ever thought about badminton, watching TV, tiddlywinks? I feel like your central nervous system must be fried.
Well,
even your response is so casual. You're like, well, yeah.
That job had to be done. And so I had no choice but to get rid of it.
No, I mean, your dedication to the chores is very, very admirable. I can't say that I've never really been in that position. Sometimes I think I've really got to pack the dishwasher. I've really got to, paint the fence. Would I shoot a shark to get them out of the way? It's hard to know.
Well, I think if the pressure was there and if the logical thing was to get rid of it, you'd probably treat it slightly differently.
And is there such a thing as a routine?
Yes, there is. Sometime in the morning, probably about 9 o'clock local time, that's the time of your longitude, you've got to take a sight of the sun. You've then got to feed yourself. You sit there thinking, how can I improve the quality of my food? Bearing in mind I'm reduced to tins. What can I add that will make this different? And you end up nearly poisoning yourself.
I didn't think I'd seen your cookbook.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
And were you fishing?
I did, but only caught one fish.
The whole time?
The whole time.
Sorry, I mean, the whole time.
Yeah, in the Southern Ocean, I took the hook off because the albatross were diving on it. And I had no need to catch them.
And you had a reputation to uphold.
I'm not worrying about anyone. I'm on my own out here. There's no one I need to impress except myself.
You're absolutely right. And that's how it should be. I'm wondering, obviously I'm a layperson, what supplies, food-wise, are you taking with you for a journey like that?
Well, on the previous voyage with my brother and a friend, it took us 77 days from Cape Town to London. And that gave me a really good idea of the amount of food I might need for a voyage of 300 days. So I worked out a sort of set of menus and said, for this week's worth of menus, I need the following food to have some sort of variety. And then I sort of multiplied it by the number of weeks and said, okay, that's the food I need, but add 10% in case. So I actually sailed with about 11 months worth of tinned food.
And maybe this is a naive question, but any sweet treats?
Oh, my aunt made a cake for me, yes. And I wasn't to open it till Cape Horn. And it was delicious, but even better, it was wrapped in a bit of newspaper, so I had something new to read.
So there must have been real high highs and, some low lows, of course. Did you ever consider giving up?
Not really. You do have your bad days. And if you're ever thinking, oh, to hell with this, I don't want to go on, you say, well, hang on a second. I've been at sea for, say, 5 weeks. If I pull out now, I'm letting down the me who worked for 5 weeks to get here. And that gets stronger the longer you've been doing it. And, when things are bad, you just say, well, hang on a second. If this was easy, someone else would have done it.
How did your health fare and how did that impact how you felt about finishing?
I kept pretty healthy, apart from crossing the equator coming home when I got huge pains in my stomach, really nasty ones. And I looked it up in the ship's captain's medical guide. And I thought, oh dear, it's appendicitis. And I was doubled up for about 3 days. Oh, that's when a ship went past and I tried to call it for assistance, but it just ignored me. And then the pain disappeared. And I thought, oh, well, it's my cooking. I poisoned myself. But 18 months later, I was rushed into hospital and they took my appendix out. And the surgeon said there was a lesion on it. It had burst and repaired itself.
This episode is brought to you in part by Audible, your go-to destination for thrilling audio entertainment. Whether you're looking for a hair-raising experience to enjoy while you're on the move or eager to dive into sinister and shocking tales, Audible has an exclusive collection of thrillers from best-selling authors that will keep you on the edge of your seat, like The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Experience stories like never before, where every chilling detail is brought to life by captivating sound design. Plus, as an Audible member, choose one title a month to make yours forever. And now, new members can try Audible free for 30 days. Just visit audible.com/WonderyPod or text WonderyPod to 500-500. That's audible.com/WonderyPod or text WonderyPod to 500-500.
Angie has made it easier than ever to connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Whether it's routine maintenance, an emergency repair, or a dream project, Angie lets you browse homeowner reviews, compare quotes from multiple local pros, and even book a service instantly. So the next time you have a home project, just Angie that and start getting the most out of your home. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com.
I have to ask you about a man called Donald Crowhurst. And I'm looking at your face to see what the initial reaction is when I say his name. When did you first hear about him?
Of New Zealand.
And what did you hear?
Yeah, he was coming up the Atlantic at the time, which he was doing actually, but nothing like the speeds he was taming. The person who first doubted Crowhurst was Chichester. And he and another qualified navigator were examining Crowhurst very closely, and they were puzzled. And they were going to check him when he arrived. His logbook would have been gone through with a fine-tooth comb. But, he wasn't a qualified navigator, Crowhurst. Whereas someone like me could probably have falsified a logbook to the point where it would pass muster. You have to be so careful. It's so easy to make a silly little slip. If someone's looking at your calculations carefully and your positions and everything else, you're going to be caught out. And I think that's probably what weighed on his mind, the fact that he just couldn't be certain.
When you returned, how long was it until you found out that he was missing and had cheated?
I'm trying to remember exactly. I was one of the 12 people who knew the truth for a while. We were all keeping very quiet about it while we tried to work out how to handle it. And in fact, my concern was for the 4 children. And going to school and all the schoolfellows saying, your daddy killed himself, wouldn't have been very nice. I wanted it hushed up. But they'd started an appeal. And Lord Goodman was consulted and said, you've started a public appeal. I'm afraid you cannot hush it up. So it had to come out. And it probably would have come out anyway, so maybe it was best to get it over with.
Why was Chichester suspicious?
One of the reasons why Chichester got suspicious, he was talking to Bulldog, which is where the long-range radio station was. And they had directional aerials. And Crowhurst was claiming he was off Australia. And Chichester rang them up, I think quite deliberately to see what the truth was. But he was coming through on the aerials pointing at South America. And yet he was claiming to be off Australia. Now, the Sunday Times said they weren't in the least surprised because the man was an electronics genius and he could probably fix it. Chichester was more practical and said, hang on, this isn't right. And I think that's what started him being suspicious. But he'd been suspicious much earlier on. Crowhurst claimed to have broken the world's speed record for a single-hander of 24 hours quite early on in his voyage. Chichester had that record at the time, and I think inevitably wanted to challenge someone who was beating him. The thing was, Crowhurst claimed it in an area where there wasn't sufficient wind to do it. And so Chichester's suspicions were just growing all the time.
It sounds like the lie was bigger than it needed to be. And in this series, we often talk about this idea that people sort of create stories or narratives that tell on themselves, that they've gone big when really, if they planned to get away with it, they needed to make a much less bombastic lie up.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that's ultimately what caused the problem for Crowhurst, because he realized when he heard Tetley had sunk that he was going to come in for the money. And he realized if Tetley had come in first, second to me, and been fastest, he'd have got the money. Crowhurst would then just have been a hero who completed the voyage. But suddenly, with Tetley out of it, Crowhurst is coming in for the money. And he knew very well he'd be examined very, very closely. And I think that's what left him not knowing really what to do.
Something incredible that happened in all of the sadness and the tragedy is that you gave your winnings to Claire and her children, to the Crowhurst family. Was that a hard decision to make, giving all of that money away to the family of someone who'd essentially cheated?
Well, yes, but they hadn't cheated. The family hadn't cheated. I'd never expected to win the money anyway. I didn't do this to make money. I did it because I wanted to be first. But I sort of conned the Sunday Times into having to equal it.
Well done.
Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code Wondery at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
You're just talking about the importance of being in the right headspace, physically being prepared. But is it fair to say there was a sensibility of men in the context of it being 1968 where there was this feeling of the need to explore, to prove yourself, to be a pioneer?
That's a very good question. At that time, it's quite interesting, isn't it? My first 6 years of life were the war. Where was Dad? Away in the army. Bombs were falling. People were dying. You be got up in the night to hear the sound of bombs and things. And you are surrounded by people, the British people, 44 million of them, who are gritting their teeth and getting through this. And I'm amazingly proud of those people because they did get through it through sheer determination. I think that had an effect on us, in those early years of our lives.
Do you think that you need to be a competitive person to do what you do?
I don't know. I'm competitive. I think we're all slightly competitive, some more than others. Was it essential? To a certain extent, I think it was. If you're not competing, where's your stimulus?
When did you last compete?
2016. It was a race across the Atlantic, single-handed, and I only came third.
Only third, and I'll keep it vague, Robin. You must have then been in your mid-70s.
I was 77.
That's a mean feat.
No, it isn't. I mean, if you're fit enough and you've got the right boat, why not go racing?
But I would argue that statistically you must be in the, I don't even know what percentile, that is fit enough to do something like that, because it's very taxing.
Yeah, but you pace yourself as much as you can. Sometimes the sea doesn't allow it. I mean, the sea's ultimately the boss. There's sometimes you say, I ought to be racing harder, but I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm going to have a little sleep. And then when I've had a couple of hours, I'll feel much better. And then I'll get the boat racing in.
Do I detect that you're somebody who doesn't like much of a fanfare?
Gets in the way a bit, doesn't it?
But every now and then, I'd say you could pat yourself on the back for your fireworks. That'd be nice.
Well, I suppose so, but you don't do it for that.
No.
You do it because you bloody well want to. 06, 07, I was told by two friends of mine, British single-handed sailors, I was too old. I was 68. I thought, how dare you? And the fact is, we're all in the same race, and neither of them finished, and I did.
You're right, Robin. You're not one bit competitive.
No.
So, when you're on land, what do you miss about being at sea?
When my wife was alive, she understood me, and I'd say to her, every 5 or so years, 6 years maybe, but darling, I think I need to go see on my own. But nothing to do with our relationship. I just needed to go to sea on my own. So I'd set off for some reason or other and cross the Atlantic, and then she'd fly out and join me. But I'd just been able to be at sea on my own, at sea, and that's sort of home. It's very hard to explain that to people, but I feel very comfortable there.
That's so lovely. You were the first person to sail around the world non-stop, single-handed. You've been knighted. What would you say has been your greatest achievement?
Producing a fabulous daughter, and I didn't have very much to do with it.
So I have to bring you back to somebody you don't feel as warmly about. How has your view on Donald Crowhurst's misguided decision changed over the 55 years since you won the race?
Do you know, it's still very similar to what it was 55 years ago. Sympathy. The poor bloke should never have gone. He set off in a boat that really wasn't ready to go, so it was unsuitable for the voyage. Now, he realized fairly early on, I think, that he got a problem there. And that's fine going down the Atlantic. It's not too rough. But what's going to happen in 30-meter waves? And I think that growing pressure on him got worse and worse, realizing if he carried on into the roaring 40s in the Southern Ocean, chances are his boat would break up and he'd be drowned. So what's he do about it? He's got this contract which says he's got to do the voyage, or he loses his house. He's put himself into an almost impossible situation. I think there was a way out. In my view, he should have pulled into Cape Town and said, I'm sorry, my boat's not standing up to it. I cannot go on. So I've stopped. Everyone would have recognized a considerable voyage on his part in getting as far as Cape Town. A lot of people would have sympathized and admired him for making that decision. I think that would have put pressure on his sponsor, who would have now looked pretty awful if he'd taken the house off him.
I think that is so well put and makes complete sense, Robin, on dry land. But you can see how logic was very far from him by the end of the race, of course.
I think logic was missing right from the start. And it just got worse. I mean, let's face it. Looking at it these days, you just turn around and say he should never have gone. He wasn't suitable mentally. I think he was desperate for Claire to say, please don't go. But she, on the other hand, was trying to support her husband. It was a possible situation for the pair of them.
Hello, Prime members. You can listen to British Scandal ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today. Or you can listen ad-free with Wondery Plus in Apple Podcasts. Before you go, tell us about yourself by completing a short survey at wondery.com/survey.
Thank you so much to Robin. In the next series of British Scandal, purveyor of ham sandwiches and Nottingham Forest's biggest fangirl, Matt Ford, is back. He will be in the driving seat, and we're going to be telling the story of two brothers that were rivals. And I know what you're thinking, sibling rivalry, no big deal. Well, this isn't just arguing over who gets to sit in the front seat to school or whose bedtime is later. These are two brothers in one of the biggest bands of all time, and they were set on a path of mutually assured destruction. Next week, Matt and I will begin the story of the Gallagher brothers. This is the fourth and final episode in our series, The Race to Ruin. If you'd like to know more about this story, you can read A Voyage for Madmen by Peter Nichols, The Strange Last Voyage of Donald Crowhurst by Nicholas Tomalin and Ron Hall, and A Race Too Far by Chris Eakin. British Scandal is hosted by me, Alice Levine. For Samizdat, our producer is Chika Ayres. Our senior producer is Joe Sykes. For Wondery, our series producer is Theodora Louloudis, and our managing producer is Rachel Sibley. Executive producers for Wondery are Estelle Doyle, Jessica Radburn, and Marshall Louis.
This episode is brought to you by the effortlessly scrumptious bite of Skinny Pop popcorn. Imagine this: perfectly popped, endlessly delicious kernels, a symphony of just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn, sunflower oil, and a sprinkle of salt. No compromise, just pure snacking freedom. And hey, if you're up for a twist, dive into flavors like zesty white cheddar to sweet and salty kettle. Every bite's a delight, light and oh so tasty. Shop Skinny Pop now.